Two men in a locker room, half naked, with a tape measure.
What's up, guys? So today we have a bit of a different video for you. We have some training footage with myself and IFBB pro Paul Kanu. This was actually months back, but I never got around to actually putting all of the clips together. So special thanks to Colton Lucas for helping out with that. You're going to see some of us just training, some of us giving tips and just kind of talking. And when there are extended sets or things like that where it's a little bit of a lull, I'm going to be doing voiceovers so you can kind of understand what we're doing, my thoughts on the process, treat it like a mini podcast in those periods, and just kind of go over what I would recommend for people to do in a similar situation.
Warming up back day with IFBB pro Paul Kanu. You gotta do it.
Yeah.
Coming to you from Dr. Dave McConey, DDS. All right, man, so warming up, we're gonna start with some pull-ups, and then I'm gonna let you lead the way on this back day. So what do you think?
Are you really?
I'm gonna let you lead the way, man.
That's gonna be great. I'm completely down for that.
All right.
That's kind of what I was thinking earlier.
So what do you got planned for today? We got some rows after that. And you have a coach right now, right? So is this what he's implementing for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So instead of doing bent over rows, we'll just do pull-ups and then maybe like a machine row.
Okay.
Even though it's completely different from this. So it's two back movements, one barbell, well, two arms, and then delt movements.
Cool.
Because I'm trying to grow my delts.
Yeah, they are looking a little narrow over here. My job is to out-angle you at all times here.
So wait till my hero shirt.
Uh-oh. Wait, no, you're gonna like this. What I got underneath?
Oh, nice, that's perfect.
Goku's Jam, for those who can't see. What I was saying to Paul is like a lot of the way I'll usually do like 3 sets per exercise, and that first one for me is like, I call it like all out, but to Paul's point, I'm using more than just probably my back there. So that was 70 pounds, and I'll strap up, and so I got, I think, 8 there. Maybe the most I've done is like 10. And then the next ones, I'm gonna drop down to 45. He said 25, and he's also like 15 pounds heavier than me, so pretty similar there. And then that'll be a slower form, and really more focus on squeezing and all of that.
And better control.
Yep.
So you guys will see here that Paul uses a fairly wide grip and has a lot of control during these pull-ups. You'll generally see that when you do see pros doing pull-ups, which is actually not that often, a lot of them seem to go towards the machines as they get bigger and bigger. But those who do pull-ups, they tend to focus on the form, keep it tight, keep it controlled. As I mentioned earlier in the video, for me, I will do that for the majority of my sets. Sometimes I do still like to see what I can get, just kind of going quote-unquote all out. But I would agree, for most people, keeping that form tight is a good idea.
It's a beyond failure.
What was it? Probably go a little bit more.
And so before we were recording, you were saying how you don't mind losing a little bit of that range of motion to keep going.
Yeah. Because you can't have a perfect range of motion. It's just asinine to think you can every single time you work out.
Sure.
And it's much better to actually have some like cheat curls or some cheat reps or some partials. Because at the end of the day, you're kind of just fatiguing the muscle. I think the weird thing is like people to understand to build muscle is like you literally have to fatigue the muscle. It doesn't matter like if you're losing lighter weight, so you can do like a higher amount of rep ranges, you're still going to get fatigued.
Yep.
Heavier weight, higher reps, or low reps, you're still going to fatigue because the weight is extremely heavy and it's hard. It's a lot more tension on you, but you can perform it to your maximum effort. It's just effort.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll usually do, obviously, the first exercise, a lot of warm-ups. The next ones I'll maybe do like one kind of like acclimation set, I guess. So Paul and I discussed, so we got the pull-ups in. That's kind of my movement. Want to get my ego training out of the way, but now I'm gonna, basically we're doing bodybuilder workout here. Doing a split, so it's mostly back there. We got biceps starting there, so it's like
biceps and shoulders.
Yeah, but today here, doing a machine row, taking the ego out of it, and we're gonna follow Paul's lead.
Sweet.
Starting light and just kind of feeling it out. Honestly, it looks really light, but when you're doing this lighter weight and higher reps after already hitting back and like really squeezing, I mean, anybody who's intentionally made sets harder, you can really tell that you can make a set, I mean, literally twice as hard just by focusing on form and squeezing. And I'm definitely not somebody who says to not go heavier, because obviously I do.
Yeah.
But,
And that's also, people don't really like take that into consideration. It's like, you can make, it's the saying of make a lightweight feel heavy.
sure.
That's exactly it.
Yep.
Like,
Well, so two things I want to point out there. One, so this is Paul's cardio because he's in the off season. So
That's why I stay lean.
that's
I train hard.
right. But also, I think I want to point out like the specificity of strength here, because the thing is, like, as much as I'd like to joke and say like, oh, like I'm stronger than Paul, and like, yeah, I used more weight on the pull-ups. But the reality is, like, I'm used to doing pull-ups a lot, and I go relatively heavy, right? Whereas, as I was saying to Paul earlier, I used a superset, so I do antagonist supersets, so I get more rest between sets. But now we're going from back to back. I don't do a ton of rowing. Paul probably does more than me, and so you can see on this exercise that neither of us are like super used to. Then he's significantly stronger. I mean, at the same weight, he just did like double the reps. So specificity of strength is a huge factor. I mean, obviously he has a lot more actual muscle than I do, but I've just gotten really good at pull-ups.
It also makes sense in like exercise selection as well. Like, you can do the exact same exercises for as long as you want, but to be able to like engage different parts of your muscle, you can switch it up. This way you're kind of like starting a new exercise that you've never done before. Now you can stimulate a lot more muscle fibers. Let's just stick with the exact same one over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
I can't talk to it.
Is it? Yeah. I'm just hearing Harry Potter. Are you hearing this right now?
No.
It's like Harry Potter in the background.
So you'll notice this is pretty light, and I think I get about 19 reps here. The problem I have with some rows like this, especially this one, is that the initial range of motion is so much easier than the second half of the range of motion. And that really applies to almost any row, but it does seem like some machines really have that as an issue more so. So back probably 5+ years ago, I used one that had these very movable handles, and I would really go heavy with it. I mean, 4 or 5 plates per side. Obviously the form was nothing like it is in these videos, but I felt like it helped me grow, and I think you're getting more out of the stretched portion there, which we do know is very important for growth. So not discounting having ideal form like we have here, or I would say really strict form like we have here, but it's not something that I would say you have to do all the time. And if you look at people like I just had on Jeffrey Verdi Schofield and Alex Leonidas, we talk about some of the advantages of more cheat type form.
All right, so going on to some curls. This is definitely a movement. So I'll often do back when I was like at my biggest, but really not that much stronger, I was doing 135-pound curls at the end of my workout, but just like, as you can imagine, just freaking, yeah. Whereas now, even with like kind of iffy form, maybe like 90s. And today I think I'm gonna go light and just like really focus on the form. And I could honestly, I'll probably do like 60 or 70 pound barbell curls. Like I feel like you probably agree that you can make a given weight so much harder by just some technique changes. So I don't know. I mean, you'll probably go heavier than me. But
No, I don't ever go too.
yeah. So all right.
I have big arms.
So you'll see here that Paul does start pretty strict with a little bit of shoulder flexion, and I'll later get into comments on shoulder flexion, how much we think you should have, and even taken to the extreme some of the issues I have with that as well. But you'll notice as the set goes on, Paul kind of picks up the tempo, and eventually he starts using momentum and kind of has some cheat form. And I have asked Paul about this because he has trained with Mike Israetel and some of the guys from RP, and he basically said that even though they always will preach training a certain way, doesn't mean they always actually do train that way. Now, I can't say for sure. I've never trained with Mike, so I'm not sure myself. But that was his comments on it, that he doesn't necessarily stick to that, even though it was something that was influential to him at one point.
My right arm forever has been half an inch to even 3/4 of an inch bigger than my left. And I was, okay, I'm right-handed, that kind of makes sense. So then I started doing everything with my left arm. I started brushing my teeth with my left hand, just like general tasks. I started using my left hand. I've done like specialization phases specifically for my left arm. It's never made up the difference. I've gotten it up to like maybe just only a half an inch difference instead of 3/4 of an inch, but I don't know if it's just like insertion's different. It's weird, but
Look at this. Hold on. Record this part.
Okay.
That's the record. So I'm kind of the same boat. I'm a right-hander, but like this one is my left.
Yeah.
It's like way bigger than my right.
on here it doesn't. Well, it's more rounded.
It's more rounded. This one's
Yeah.
like a little bit like, kind of like
Don't
a little
worry.
bit longer insertion. This one's like a little bit like shorter.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes the weird difference. Still like an inch or two bigger than the other one.
Don't worry, folks. I brought
He
the
brought
tape
the
measure,
tape.
so we're gonna check afterwards.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, once upon a time, I was curling at the end of my workout 135 pounds for 6 to 8 reps. So obviously much heavier than I'm going here. But the key is that both in that situation and in this situation, I was going 2 0 RAR or 1 RAR. I was training very hard. So there's not a ton of advantages, in my opinion, to cheating like that with the form. I mean, there can be in certain situations, but as Paul referenced earlier, the most important thing is, are you training with sufficient volume and are you training hard enough, right? And here you can see that we were both training to the point that we really can't get any more reps without dramatically changing our form.
Not a lot of range of motion.
You're gonna do less range of motion here. Okay. And so Paul's gonna keep going, but I'll explain. He was saying, so our third set, we're gonna do a crazy, if you wanna call it, giant set, rest pause set, extended set. We're gonna drop down to 50 and basically just keep going, rest 10, 15 seconds, keep going until our arms explode.
All right, so this extended set is like 3.5 minutes, so I will definitely talk you through it. So basically here we are using a lighter weight, going to basically failure. I know some people would say, no, it's not failure, it's short of failure, it's 0 RAR or 1 RAR. Point is, we're getting to the point that we cannot do another clean rep without significantly altering our form, and that's basically the goal here. Then we're resting about 10-15 seconds. This is just a form of rest pause training. Many people are familiar with that through DC training, which is 10 to 15 breaths. In my experience, that's about 30 to 45 seconds. Sometimes you see these big guys though doing 15 breaths, and I mean it's a minute, which is why I really say DC training is 3 sets per exercise, because at that point that's a new set. that, in my opinion, but it's really just semantics. Obviously, there are plenty of other methods out there with myo reps and things like that that are different forms of rest pause. To me, it's just another way to fatigue the muscle. Do I think that some of these will get you further than just regular training? I'm not sure if we have a lot of evidence to show that. You know, when we look at studies that show drop sets versus rest pause versus traditional sets, there's some evidence in favor of these different methods, these intensifiers, you could call them. So I don't dissuade people from using them, but I would also say that it's not something you need to be incorporating into your training, especially not all the time. Now, at the end of this segment, you're going to see me discussing shoulder flexion during a bicep curl. And if that's not clear in the segment there, I'll elaborate here. Essentially, you will see variations. Now, on the extreme end, you have something like a drag curl, where you have your shoulder, actually your arms, your humerus is back behind you, right? You're actually in a little bit of shoulder extension, and you're curling, dragging that bar up against you. Now, there are, I think, some instances that you can use that. And then on the other end, you have something like a preacher curl, where you're starting with the shoulder in a flexed position. But some people will consider that, hey, the biceps are, somewhat involved in shoulder flexion, and therefore we should incorporate that into the bicep curl. The problem I have with that, especially with a free weight motion, is that just based on the force of gravity and how your arm is aligned, you're really taking so much pressure off and so much tension off of the biceps there. So, there could in theory be a situation, maybe some sort of machine setup, where you could go from your biceps being fully stretched with the shoulder extended up until your shoulder is now flexed and the biceps are still having a lot of tension on there. Maybe you could design a machine like that. But using a free weight movement like this, you'll see towards the end, I'm kind of cueing Paul here saying, look, watch what happens. I hit what is essentially near failure with regular form. And then I incorporate this extreme shoulder flexion that you see people like Mike Isertel and Steve Hall do. And it takes so much tension off of the biceps and puts so much more on the shoulder that I can easily crank out another 4 or 5 reps. And honestly, I probably could have kept going. That I just don't see it to be the most effective way. Now, again, Steve Hall and some of these guys, they have fantastic biceps. Do I actually think it's making a meaningfully negative impact? No, but that is still my logic behind it.
Maybe people differ, and for the record, I'm not saying that that form is not working your bicep, but for me, it is much easier because when I'm doing this, obviously you can't perfectly isolate a muscle, but like it's my bicep, and yes, biceps are involved in shoulder flexion. So to me, it's justifiable to go from here to here. But once you go here, I mean, look, the gravity is taking, like the tension is not on the bicep anymore to the same extent. And the reason I was able to get, even after all those like 30 reps, I was still able to get like another 5 because now I'm involving so much shoulder. Those last 5, I barely felt in my biceps, even with them super pumped. It's a shoulder raise. Now, to be fair, it also makes sense that anytime you're incorporating a new muscle, you could do more, right? Like I've already fatigued the biceps, and I'm now adding shoulders. It doesn't mean that if I started this way, I wouldn't have also maybe stopped at like 30. So I'm not trying to discredit the form, but for me, anytime I've then gone from what I consider my normal form to then doing this, easily I can crank out another 4 or 5 reps, yeah.
96.
How you feel?
It hurts.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. It's a pretty nice pump. And that's like, see, maybe you can consider that as like overall total volume, but it's stuff like this where you don't need to have like more sets. You can just keep that one set and then drag it on with that giant set. Like, is it increasing your total overall volume? Yeah, you're doing more workload, but like, you don't need to add another set on top of it.
Yeah.
That alone, doing like freaking 96 reps with like 50, resting between 50 to 20 seconds, that's gonna fatigue your muscle. That's a lot of effort. And you get your food in, you sleep properly, it grows. And I'm kind of dying.
Yeah, honestly, we did what, 2 sets of failure with 70, and then that rest pause. I think biceps are done for today.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm bringing Paul into my world of overhead pressing. This was unplanned today, but we got a little time, so we'll see. I'm gonna make a prediction that because, well, so your pressing is unquestionably stronger than mine, but this is not a movement you do a lot, so it'll be interesting to see how we do. How did that feel?
Pretty good.
So I noticed that you are like up here rather than here. Is that on purpose, or are you just so big that it doesn't come down?
It doesn't do that.
Wow, so you can almost rest in that position.
Basically, my arms are just like.
Wow. Jeez. All right, so I just completed 8 reps here. Oh, easy. Get out of here, Paul.
My shoulders are pretty strong.
Yeah.
I just don't do overhead press because it's just like
Sure.
it's too much energy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
Shoulder presses are much better.
so I think my PR with 145 is 14 or 15, but not like, again, kind of like the pull-ups. It's like with me going like pretty rapid pace, you know? So, yeah, and especially if that's not a movement that you do that much, that's solid.
Well, doing like shoulder pressing from just like dumbbells also does transfer over a little.
Sure, sure.
But it's not like you're not specifically practicing
Right.
barbell presses.
Yep.
Up, good, good. And that's a failure set.
A little bit of a back off set here, 135. Crisp form. Big dog. All right, so we're gonna do a new exercise for Paul here. It is reverse grip Smith bench. It's a favorite of DC trainees. So you can see Paul on rack really pushing away from the machine. Obviously you have that resistance, so you don't have to just go up, you're pushing up and away. And a lot of these big DC guys will swear by this movement. So in the same way that we did the rest pause for the curls, this is gonna be a rest pause as well.
So something I want to point out here is that you'll see Paul do things like the 96 reps for the curls, and he'll talk about focusing the muscle and fatiguing the muscle, but let's not let that distract us from the fact that he is extremely strong, as evidenced by the fact that on a movement that he doesn't even do, like an overhead press, he was able to very easily crank out 145 for 12 reps. Looking at how he did that, he probably could have done 15 if he kept that form and went to failure. And if he had gone with a more robust form and really kind of putting a little bit of oomph into it, you know, he might have cranked out 20 reps, right? So that's very strong for somebody who's not consistently doing that movement. On bench press, if you go to his Instagram, he's routinely doing well over 100-pound dumbbells for reps. So even these guys, almost all the guys who will talk about, you know, maybe drop sets or supersets or intensifiers and the like, and bodybuilding training, at the end of the day, they're still very strong. And I don't know if there's really many, if any, examples of people who look the size and impressiveness as Paul, who do not have the strength to match that.
I think that's the problem. Like a lot of these like coaches, a lot of these like fitness people are always trying to like spice things up.
Well, you have to, right? If you want to have a brand and you want to sell stuff,
It's about a rich piano, right, babe?
lightweight, baby.
So just a final set here, and then you're gonna see us on the last clip here measuring our arms with the pump, seeing how they compare. So I won't spoil the surprise, but I will say it's always important to note how much limb length and insertions play a role in how your muscles look. And while it is true that nobody actually cares on a bodybuilding stage what a measurement is, it kind of gives you a understanding and a reference point, because the reality is you could see somebody on Instagram with shredded 14-inch arms that look super impressive, but that person in person might not actually look that impressive. And likewise, you might see somebody who is maybe a little higher in body fat, maybe not the best insertions, but they have 18-inch arms, and I can pretty much guarantee that that person is going to look impressive in person. So it's just one more reference point so that you don't lose focus and just see Instagram pictures.
Two men in a locker room, half naked, with a tape measure.
I don't think I know how to use this.
So, all right. All right, so I'm gonna go first. All right, let's see. Usually I'll like let the slack kind of go.
Yeah.
And then I'll like, you have to subtract 2 on this thing because, all right, so
Like
if you look
17.
at like, see where like the 2 line is, so that's at 17, or that's at 19 and a quarter, but obviously like you have to subtract 2.
Yeah.
So I'm getting 17 and a quarter. I'll do it one more time.
Okay.
So, all right, and that's like 17 and 3/8, but I'll say 7. And then obviously that's with a pump. Without a pump, it's probably like just under 17. So. All right, so now we're discussing the importance of insertions, height, limb length, all that stuff. So Paul is, well, I'm 197, 198. Paul is 210, but I'm 6'1". You said you're 5'7"?
Yeah.
All right, you got this. What do you mean you've never measured before, bro? You're a bodybuilder. All
I
right.
rarely ever think about it.
All right, so, okay, so that's crazy because, again, you'll see, so the 2 is literally exactly the same spot. Same spot, right? 17 and 3/8. And let's keep flexing, I'll go this. There you go, keep flexing. All right, now we gotta give you more credit than that. There we go. All right, so almost 18 then.
Yeah.
Just shy of 18 with a pump, but I don't think these quite look the same.
And that's also